My name is Raimo. I'm working in E-Residency as head of partnerships, and one of my main tasks is actually to work with different service providers who are presented in our marketplace. What I'm going to do now is I will give a brief overview. What is marketplace? How does this actually work? And what kind of services you can find there? And in the end, if one of you or many of you are actually working in some industry or in some company which may be useful for our other e-residents, then I will in the end explain shortly also how to become a member of E-Residency Marketplace. So E-Residency Marketplace is something you probably need if you have already applied for e-residency and decided to start opening your company. And this is a certain section on our website where you can find different type of service providers who can help e-residents to start and develop their company or to use the services that, for example, digital nomads may need. One thing I would like to point out is that this is a curated choice of different service providers. This is not the whole choice of different companies that are offering services for e-residents, just a small fraction of it. For example, one of the sets of services is company formation, virtual office, and legal address and contact person service. We have like 16 or 17 choices on our marketplace. However, Estonian financial inspection have given out the licenses for different companies, like I think up to 200 different companies, to have the right to provide that service, but not all of them are onboarded to the marketplace. So what makes marketplace a bit special is that we have direct contact with all those service providers that are presented there. So they have gone through some kind of process. We have contacted them, we have talked to them, understood what are the key markets, key industries they are serving, what are their main business goals, and how do they serve their customers, and so on, so on. So we could say that it's the choice there, it has gone through some kind of filter that's probably needed to understand which service providers we recommend to choose. But of course, I would like to point out one more time, you don't have to use only those service providers present in marketplace. This is just a choice that we could recommend. The other thing that's probably important to note at the moment is that we are not responsible for the actions that are taking place between service providers and you as their customers. So E-Residency Marketplace is a kind of like a platform for you to understand what kind of services are there and who are the players in that market. But we unfortunately or fortunately cannot take any responsibility of the actions that you have with this certain service provider. However, of course, we are always happy to get the feedback if you are not happy with something, or if you are extremely happy with something that's connected to the service providers. I think the main question that comes quite often is that how do I choose? For example, if you think about the main service that all the e-residents need when they start opening the company is the company formation, contact person, and legal address services. We have choice of 16 or 17 different service providers there. And as I already told, there are up to 200 different companies who are eligible in Estonia to provide that service. So the choice is very wide, price levels are very different, and so on and so on. Based on my experience, 5 or 6 months here in this team, when I have talked to different e-residents, also talked to the service providers, one thing comes up quite often is the suggestion to think few steps ahead if you start choosing your service provider. They are a bit different. Some of them are very narrowly focused on some specific starting, let's say, focusing on the services that help you to start the company or do the absolute minimum, the necessary minimum that you need to have. Although the others have taken more thorough angle, so that they basically want to get to know you better. They would like to meet you. They will do a lot of background checks, etc., etc. And they are basically walking hand in hand with you during this process. So they are very different. But when you start choosing the company, I would suggest you think about what is your business plan actually? What are your plans for the development of the company? So it may be probably at the moment the case that you just need to register your company and you don't know exactly what are you going to do in the next few months, or you are still developing the very first phase of your company, and you know that there are not coming in any invoices, for example, or you are not going to invoice your customers in the nearest future. However, it may be actually something that you need to do in 6 months, in 1 year, and so on. So think a few steps ahead. Think about what kind of services do you need in a year's perspective at least, and then take the list of different service providers available there. What kind of services they are providing? Would you like to have like all-in-one kind of service where one service provider is able to help you with company formation and accounting and tax consulting and something else? Or you are ready to basically use different service providers for different specific tasks? Based on the experience I have got so far, I understood that usually e-residency companies choose service providers that can help them with many different tasks. So this is a suggestion that I definitely recommend you to think through. Then when you are choosing the service provider, think about what kind of industry you are operating. What type of company do you have? Are you like solopreneur, solo entrepreneur, or freelancer, one-man show, how it's called? Or you are going to expand quickly, for example, to hire a lot of people in the nearest future, so on, so on. And also, where do you come from? This is also necessary, because when we think about service providers, especially the ones who are providing virtual office services and company formation, some of them have targeted themselves to the certain geographical region or to a certain industry, or they have decided not to cater some of the industries. Like there are definitely some companies who have decided not to serve cryptocurrency companies, for example. Then the pricing. The price level is very varied. You see some examples later, but basically I must admit that it's quite wide, the selection of price range. You can think about it that way, that if the one company offers the same service with a double or 3 times higher price than the other, there may be actually a good reason for that, and quite often it's the fact that low cost solution may be very, very basic, and much more expensive service may be much more thorough. You have more direct contacts with your service provider. You may have a dedicated consultant helping you through the process. It may even consist some kind of visit or curated program here in Estonia to get your business going or something like this. So basically, I recommend to ask for the service provider, explain what's actually behind the price. And then, of course, is actually the fact that relationship with the service provider. Do you feel confident to be as independent as possible? Do you really need or want to have only basic services, or you would like to have a lot of support from the service provider? You see that you actually need to ask a lot of additional questions. Or one more thing you could consider is that maybe you would like to find a service provider that is able to help you with your own language, which may not be English. However, all the application process for e-residency is in English, and usually all the service providers are able to help you with in English. So basically English is like a basic, the main platform in terms of languages, but there are a lot of different companies who could help you in your local language. There are definitely companies who can help in Russian, some of them in German, some of them in Spanish, and Turkish, and so on, so on. And one more thing, if you look at the marketplace at the moment, I can say it's not going to be like this in January. Hopefully already we are going to upgrade our marketplace. The profile pages of different service providers is going to be more detailed, as well as the filtering and search options. So at the moment, you see more like columns of different service types, and then the list of different service providers you can find there. We are going to be more demand-based, so that you can make more exact choices what kind of services you actually need, and then the marketplace filtering options provide you better choice for that. But here you can see basically main overview of the types of services that are presented in the marketplace. One of the sections is actually digital signature and authentication and access to Estonian e-services. Then, of course, company information, legal address, contact person services, accounting, then tax and legal consulting, of course, banking and fintechs, and then all the additional services where are, for example, hiring and relocation services, insurance, as well as some other services, for example, products that help you to boost your sales or marketing activities. I'm going to go through the main types. Company information, I will call it company information. Some people call it virtual office services. Generally, it's something you need in the first hand. If you would like to open your EU company in Estonia through E-Residency, then the company formation is the first step. Based on Estonian laws, you need to have a contact person and a legal address in Estonia. So you need to find a service provider that is basically offering you that service, and getting all the posts you may get from Estonian authorities. However, it doesn't happen so often that they basically send you something on paper, but it happens sometimes. So company registration state fee in Estonia is 190 euros, but it is usually included in the price that the service providers ask from you for the company formation. I will talk about the prices a bit later, but generally in the company formation and this virtual office services, there is a company formation, legal address, and contact person service. Quite often, also the same service providers are able to provide you accounting services and creation of annual reports. Some of the service providers that are virtual office providers can also help you with tax consulting, and also different kind of administrative support, like a virtual assistant or something like this. Now, as I told you, the price range is really wide. Generally, we may say that estimated average cost for company formation is about 200 to 400 euros. As I said already, 190 is a state fee. It can't be lower than that, but it also makes sense that there is some extra added because your service providers has some cost, or they provide you the service. That's why the additional part is added by the company that's providing you the service. So it's like 200 to 400 euros. Most of them are in between 250, 350. Again, I strongly recommend you to ask from the ones who have a like lower or the highest cost, like what is the difference, what exactly the service that they are providing. It may be that this 400, 500 euros company formation may include something that's not included in the price of 200 from the other company. Then the legal address and the contact person services are usually billed yearly. In some cases also monthly fee is valid. For example, if you take Solo or some other service providers, they have a monthly fee for the services. but quite often it's a yearly price, which is in between 250 to 400 euros. Accounting is usually billed monthly basis, but always depends on a company. It's starting usually from 50 to 60 euros a month. For example, also like in some cases, like in solo case, as I said, they have like a package service where it's already included legal address, contact person, accounting, or from Tu Empresa in Estonia, your company in Estonia, it's in English, I guess. They have also accounting service built on monthly basis, but this price already includes, for example, a legal address and contact person. So the pricing may be different for different companies, but they are very general average costs. Some of them are lower, some of them are higher, definitely. And then tax consulting and legal consulting, which are tightly connected, the prices usually start from 80 to 90 euros per hour when it's billed on hourly basis. Again, there are some companies where some part of tax consulting is already included in some other service price. So, but definitely, I think this section is the most important one, because this is where it all starts. After you have chosen the service provider and agreed on terms and prices and services, then it takes some time and you will have the company and ready to operate with that one. Then the second important thing is banking and business banking and payment services, or fintechs. If you would like to receive money or send something, send money to someone, then of course you need a business banking account, or alternatively fintech solution payment service, let's say. There are actually three options. First of all is to open a bank account in Estonia. There is one traditional bank who is more active than others. It's called LHV. And they are opening also banking accounts for Estonian companies that are created by E-Residence. However, everyone who is applying for a bank account there needs to go through their AML KYC processes. And we, as E-Residency program, cannot guarantee that you actually get this account. It's decided solely by the LHV or whatever business banking service provider by themselves. So the other option is actually to open a bank account for your company, for your EU company, which is created in Estonia, in some other EU country. We don't have so much information which banks are usually used or how often this option is actually used, but it's not so common, we may say, compared to the Estonian banking solution or using fintechs. So, and when you are not able to open a business banking account, or you do not want to, then the alternative number 3 is actually fintech payment service providers. We have choice of them in the marketplace. We have Holvi, Payoneer, Paysera, Stripe, and TransferWise. And Holvi, unfortunately, is onboarding new customers until the end of this year. Starting from 1st of January, they are not onboarding new customers anymore. However, they do still serve the existing ones. But Payoneer, Paysera, Stripe, and TransferWise are different alternatives you can choose from our marketplace. But of course, the choice is not limited to that as well. And there are, like, we may say, hundreds of different business banking solutions in EU and EAA region that are providing actually the services that's necessary for E-Residence. What I recommend you to read is actually our E-Residence of Estonia Facebook community, where this question about which business banking solution to choose is quite often actually discussed. What I suggest also is actually go to our E-Residency website and to the knowledge base. And if you find their banking section, you can find a nice comparison table, business banking, I think is banking comparison table. And all those different companies that are presented on our marketplace, in the business banking section are there in this comparison table. You can see what are the terms for different companies, what is the pricing, what kind of services do they provide or they don't provide. Yes, it's one of the main questions, of course, that if the e-resident says that, for example, LHV or other banks do not want to open a traditional business banking account, what to do? Then we usually recommend to work with fintech. I know we are totally available. There are some cases where traditional business banking account is necessary. In that case, we recommend you to think about an option to open banking account in some other EU country, especially if you are originally from some of the EU countries. Or also you can always ask from other Estonian banks as well. We don't say, we are not going to say that no other bank is actually onboarding e-residency companies. They are, but it happens rarely, and they definitely would like to make very thorough due diligence and background checking and everything in order to be sure that you are eligible to be part of their customer base. But 3 things I would like to point out about business banking. First of all, be ready that you need to go through AML KYC processes. Banks and fintechs ask a lot of background questions. They want to know exactly what kind of business are you going to open? What is your connection to Estonia? Are you going to have employees here? Do you have customers here? Where does the money come from, etc., etc. So the more open you are and the more exact information you give them, the bigger is the chance that you get this account. The problem with some of the countries is that they are in the FATF list, which means that it is highly unlikely that you will get a business banking account open when you are from these countries. That's a sad truth. Sorry, we cannot we cannot do anything about it. But because the decisions what kind of e-residents will be onboarded as customers to the fintech or not is totally done by themselves, and they will evaluate the risks that may be for this specific service provider. So be ready to go through the processes, and it may happen that during your when you are already a customer and operating with transactions, quite often it may happen that fintechs or business banking solution providers may ask some additional questions about the source of the money when you are already a customer as well. Then what more experienced e-resident entrepreneurs have suggested is to have more than one business banking or fintech account, just in case some of the service providers decide on different reasons to close your account or to hibernate it or whatever they will decide to do. Then it's always a good to have a backup. So if you dare to, I recommend you to have more than one business banking account. And then, yeah, as I told you, there are hundreds of different fintechs outside of marketplaces. You can use them as well until you trust them. We always recommend to do a thorough background check for those companies themselves as well that are providing this service. Tax and legal consulting. This is actually tightly connected to virtual office providers as well, because taxation is a hot topic always when you are a resident and you have a company and you need to do your annual report, you need to pay taxes and so on, so on. There are different kind of tax and legal consulting companies in our marketplace. Usually they are able to help you with international and Estonian tax consulting. With international ones, there are some of the companies which are focused on some specific markets or consider themselves to be experts of this specific market. For example, we have some, at least Thomson & Stein, for example, is a big expert of Polish taxation, for example. HP and HP knows well Finnish tax system and so on and so on. And then of course there are some big international groups which have offices all around the world and can of course help you with many different markets like Ernst & Young and BDO as well, for example. And as I mentioned before, there are a lot of significant number of virtual office providers that also have tax consultants in their team as well. Then what else they offer? Legal consulting and contract creation, of course. Like if you are starting a company, you need to have different documents ready before you actually can found a company. Then they could help you with licensing, for example, cryptocurrency licensing, but some others as well, and may help you with trademark registration as well. And of course, dissolving or selling the company as well. About the costs, as I also mentioned before, the prices start usually from 80–90 euros per hour, but depending on the amount of hours you need, depending on the projects, it may be different, of course. And quite often there are project-based prices for example, for issuing licenses or some other specific tasks you ask your service provider to do. And then we can call it others. There are in the marketplace many other companies which are providing different services which are not in the main focus in the first hand quite often. There is a special section in the marketplace called Digital ID, where you can find the links to Estonian e-services, and you can find the different service providers that could help you in verification services or using your digital ID. And then there is the section called Grow, where you can find the different service providers that could help you with marketing and sales tools, hiring and relocation services, insurance, virtual assistants, and so on. Also, some co-living, co-working options are available in the marketplace. I could say that in 2020, probably we may be focusing more on these sections as well to help you to grow your businesses and to find the valuable partners that could actually add extra value for digital nomads or e-residents and the companies to grow. Now, the last slide is about how to become a marketplace member. If you actually are providing a service which may be useful for different e-residents, digital nomads, entrepreneurs that are running Estonian or cross-border companies, then talk to us. And I would like to point out some things. We would like to onboard different service providers that are relevant for entrepreneurs that are e-residents or digital nomads generally. As mentioned, we do due diligence. We make quite a thorough background search. We try to understand, do you have all the operational necessary licenses? What is actually the business that you are providing? Is the business model transparent? What is the reputation of your company and the beneficiary owners? Do they have actually a good background and so on? And also we expect our marketplace members to have excellent tax payment behavior for Estonian tax boards if it's necessary. I would like to mention one more time, it's a curated choice. So we don't take all the applicants who would like to be in the marketplace. We have the right to choose and also to remove them from the marketplace if we find out that it's not maybe a good idea to keep those marketplace members there anymore. But usually we are open in the discussions. So if we see some problems, we openly communicate it. And usually we would like to help you to get over them if possible, and then we can continue the cooperation. But as I told you, we may give some notice that we need to remove someone from the marketplace. And then, of course, I would like to say that we usually don't onboard companies that are really in very seed stage. So basically, if you only have a prototype or an idea, we are not going to onboard you. We would like to see a working service, and we'd like to see that you have e-resident customers. And how does this work usually is that, first of all, we have a special partnership form on our website. You can find it on the footer of our website. Please fill it in. Then I'm quite sure I may have, or my colleagues have, some additional questions. We start the communication. If we see that it's beneficial for both parties, we would like you to fill in marketplace onboard form. And then after that, we do the due diligence and background checks. And one important key step in onboarding is actually to get reference letters by your customers who are actually e-residents. We would like to get them digitally signed so that we know that you are actually operating in the market that is relevant for e-residents. And then some technical setup, and we are going to be live. After that, usually we communicate our freshly made partnership in the newspaper, in our newsletter, and then we from time to time propose different cooperations for you, or you can pitch your ideas to us as well in terms of content creation in our channels or your channels. Also joint events, that's something we are doing quite often, that we invite some service providers with us to some events. And we also do the webinars like the one that's taking place here during the webinar marathon. We have had already some payment service providers here, some tax consulting, some virtual offices, so on. And some of them are still coming this year. And we have already decided that we continue webinars next year because we have some nice service providers who are actually interested to join us and do the webinars for you. So this is how it works. But now I'm more than ready to answer your questions. Sorry, it may take a bit time. There may be some silence during the process because I will read the questions. I will keep this slide here. So Q&A. Digital marketing agency from Nepal would like to cooperate. Please fill in the partnership form that's in the footer of our website, and then we can see whether there is a possibility to cooperation. There is a question, FinTech, could it be one reason to choose a service provider? Virtual office service providers cannot guarantee you the account in any of the fintechs or business banking solution providers. However, we know that they do have cooperation. Some of the virtual office providers have cooperation with some certain fintechs or banks. So they may have actually good connections there, and it may help you to prepare yourself as good as possible for this AML KYC processes in order to be in order to go through the process and to actually be accepted. But one more time, they cannot guarantee you any of the accounts. They can help you, and there are corporations, and they can help you to prepare for those onboarding processes for the fintechs. This is the way they cooperate. There is a question, is it possible to start a company without opening traditional business banking account? Yes, you can. This is something that this is recommended, of course. You can use TransferWise and Stripe, just as I recommended in the beginning. Think few steps ahead, what kind of services you will need, and then review the different go through the websites of different payment service providers so that you actually understand what kind of services do they offer. And if the choice of services is enough for you or good enough for you, and you like the pricing model as well, then you are good to go, of course. There is also a note in the same question that you had a feeling that LHV is not very customer friendly based on the webinar. This is exactly the opposite, actually. LHV is really customer friendly. So whoever wants to have actually a real business banking account, we still recommend you to apply for account there as well if you want to. Someone asked from the recorded webinar. Yes, there hopefully will be a recorded webinar if I didn't push any wrong buttons in my computer and it didn't actually save it. Let's see, but hopefully yes. There is a question, what kind of service providers we suggest if you change locations every couple of months, so you are kind of digital nomad, and who has experience with taxis. I guess that all the service providers that you can find from the column virtual office plus taxis is actually a good choice. Just try to contact some of them, describe your situation and describe what kind of business you are running or what is your lifestyle, and then try to agree with them and understand are they perfect match or not for you. Depends also, of course, that are you a solo entrepreneur and everything you do it for yourself, or you have some other shareholders, so someone in Estonia, then it's already a bit more complicated maybe. So yeah, you can choose someone from this column in the first hand actually. State fee, will the state fee go lower at some point? What does it include? We as e-residency team do not decide the price of the state fee. It's decided by the different authorities in Estonia. It's rather unlikely that it's going to be lower. I guess so. And basically, this state fee covers all the operations that need to be done by police, border guard, different ministries to conduct the background search, to print the documents and to send the documents to your pickup point. So that, sorry, this is about, sorry, I mixed up. This is for getting digital ID. You mean company information 190? Yeah, basically it's the operational fee. It covers all the operations that need to be done by business registry and different ministries to arrange this process of registration. Yeah. So, well, I think the price won't go lower in the nearest future, as much as I don't know at least. Feel free to ask more questions. I don't have anymore at the moment.
Hey, Raimo. Maybe I will jump in.
No, you would like to ask something?
I would.
No, yes.
Okay. What is like the minimum service provider that I have to choose from the marketplace? Do I have to choose any of them, or maybe I can just do everything by myself as an e-resident?
Well, you still need to have this legal address and contact person. This is something you definitely need in Estonia.
Okay. Can I do the accounting myself?
Basically, it's possible, but it's rather difficult. You have to know all the exact details of Estonian laws that are connected to accounting. I would recommend still to use some service provider who are actually specialists. I think if you would like to develop your business, you just spend unreasonably a lot of time on getting to know all the necessary laws, but at the same time you could do something to develop your business and to pay a bit more for the service provider to get the accounting service that's professional.
Actually, as a side note, those questions I just asked Raimo is something that is asked very often in our support channels. And yeah, indeed, the only service that you actually have to have is contact person and legal address, as Raimo said. And accounting, we do recommend to use a service provider. Even Estonian companies, small like one-man companies operating within Estonia, not location independently, they still choose to use the accounting, at least for the end of financial year statement.
I am also one-man company in Estonia, and I have done a couple of times my accounting myself. It took unreasonably a lot of time, although I don't consider myself to be so stupid that I don't understand the laws, but it's still like, I recommend to use a service provider.
Okay, let's see. Do you guys have any more questions? There are some. Yeah.
Somebody asked that can we suggest some company that could help with tax and legal consulting in Hungary? Oh, I don't need to be checked. Basically, I do think that the ones we have a couple of tax and legal consulting companies that are located in Poland and working with Central Eastern European markets. Maybe they could help with that with you. They could help you with that one. And who was with us in Budapest?
I don't remember.
We had, I think, we had maybe one office with us in Budapest during the E-Residency week. So maybe this is also an option to ask from them whether they are ready to help you with taxation in Hungary.
Actually, one office has quite a wide network of partners outside Estonia as well. So they cover many countries. But again, as Raimo mentioned earlier, you don't have to stick only to the service providers listed at our marketplace. It's completely fine if you use local service providers as well. So if you're especially interested in taxes in Hungary, you can go there and ask advice there. If you're concerned that you mentioned that you're an e-resident and you're running a company and people maybe don't understand what kind of a company is it, then you can just say that this is a private limited company or a limited liability company that is run internationally. It's as simple as that. It's not something new. Sometimes the term e-residency can confuse people to think that maybe it's something very different, but it's still like limited liability company.
And of course, one option is to choose any of the big international tax auditing legal consultancy groups, BDO, Ernst & Young, Grant Thornton, something like this. They would definitely have office in Hungary, I guess. Then there is a question, is it too complicated to change service providers to lower that service fee? Well, the fact that you would like to change may actually mean that you have some extra costs, because we don't know exactly all the detailed information about the terms and conditions of every separate service provider. But as I mentioned before, for example, legal address and contact person services are sometimes calculated in yearly basis, and you have to pay 1 year in advance. So whether and how you will get something back when you are going to leave from the company before the end of the year, you need to ask from your service provider. If they say that, yeah, okay, you were here only half a year, we pay back the other half, then basically it's quite easy, I think. But what makes it more complicated is actually if you have accounting services also there. So both the existing service provider and the new one that you have chosen need to communicate to each other to take over the accounting in a most easiest and most reasonable way. So and I think actually the changing process itself may be a bit more expensive than actually continuing with the existing one. However, of course, if you are not happy with the service and you would like to definitely change it, then of course it's recommended to do that. You don't have to stick into one service provider until, I don't know, 10 years. It's up to you to change. You just be sure to understand all the costs that may be there during this process. Could I recommend any service provider that communicates in Dutch? Unfortunately, I do not have that kind of information. I think on the marketplace there is none at the moment, but at the same time, there may be some company that's not in the marketplace, but serving e-residents who could help you in Dutch as well. Hopefully, you will get the good service in English then, at least.
You can reach out to other e-residents through the E-Residents of Estonia Facebook group.
Ask from other Dutch e-residents, what do they use? Do you plan on offering e-residency pickup location in Latin America? If yes, which countries and when? We hope to have it one day, yes. There is a plan. I don't know how much we can say.
So yes, we are working on it. We know you guys are interested in it. We cannot promise a time frame because it does mean that we need to possibly change some laws and work very closely together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and with the Police and Border Guard Board because they actually issue the residency cards. We are looking at the moment Brazil and
Sao Paulo.
And Sao Paulo, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Sao Paulo in Brazil would be the Latin American pickup location one day, hopefully. Mm. And then do you think an e-resident company fits well for financial investments trading in stock markets? In such a case, what kind of service providers there are? I recommend to talk to tax and consulting companies. I do think it's possible, but to go into detail, I recommend to ask from some of the bigger legal and tax consulting companies. We have the special column of tax and legal companies there, so pick one from there, for example, to ask additional questions. But I think it's doable. Yeah, you can do financial investments using your residency company, if I understood you correctly. There is a question about solopreneurs. With a company as a solopreneur, e-resident and digital nomad, is it true that you won't have to pay income tax if you don't stay in any country for longer than 3 months? It's not true. It's the question, of course, is that it's not specified whether you are meaning like a private person or a corporate income tax. But with corporate income tax depends on your tax residency of your company. But it's e-residency is not meant for avoiding income taxation. Mm-hmm. Would you like to specify there something?
I would just like to use this chance to invite you to come listen into our webinar that's happening also next week. And this webinar is with PricewaterhouseCoopers Estonia, and they will go over the taxation rules for e-residents. So yeah, your question, next time you ask the question during the international tax webinar, please do specify whether you mean personal taxation or corporate taxation. Okay.
I think we have gone through all the questions now.
Okay. I think so too. For now, I think we will call it a day. It is Friday, but we hope that Raimo will join us again next year and tell us more about the marketplace, the new marketplace, and how to use the filters to find the service providers.
Visit our marketplace sometime to see whether the new one is live.
It will be soon. And thank you guys for joining. I hope you got some of the answers here. I noticed that some of you are e-residents, some of you are thinking of becoming e-residents, some of you have companies, and others are about to launch your companies. So we hope that this webinar helped you out a little bit to move forward. And
yeah, everyone who wants to partner with us, then start with filling the partnership form that you can find from the footer of our website, and then we can start discussions what kind of services and in which conditions we can onboard to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you everybody for joining. Raimo, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting.
Okay, have a great weekend and talk to you soon. Ciao.